when I spent quite a bit of time actually reflecting on that particular summit night and how I actually managed it in retrospect. And I think there is a lot going on. And I think it's very easy to get overwhelmed. And I think at times I was starting to kind of creep into that. So how I actually managed it was just to kind of have this subset of like 5, 6, 7 questions. Like, how do I feel? What do I think my blood sugar's doing? Do I need to stop? Do I feel like I'm at risk of dropping low? And if I was happy with all of the answers of those questions, I would actually kind of subconsciously park it in one side of my brain and then just go back to solely focusing on the physical climb for maybe 10, 15 minutes and then rechecking in with those set of questions because otherwise there's a lot going on at once. And I think it would have, yeah, been quite difficult. So that's how I managed it.
Welcome to the T1 Determined podcast, where we bridge the conversation of type 1 diabetes and endurance. I'm Joseph Anthony Marcello, a runner, a weightlifter, a mountaineer, and athlete. As someone living with T1D, I'm on a mission to uncover and share science-backed information that drives optimal performance and longevity. And as a storyteller, I'm here to explore and share incredible feats in T1D sports physiology. Let's tackle this together. Today, we're honored to be joined by Dr. Rachel Smith, a medical doctor and pioneering mountaineer from Belfast. At just 28, Rachel is aiming to make history as the first woman with T1D to summit Mount Vinson, Antarctica's highest peak. Diagnosed just before her 3rd birthday, Rachel was the first child in Northern Ireland to use an insulin pump, and has since conquered the highest peaks in South America, Africa, and Australia. She's now preparing to endure 2 weeks in Antarctica's extreme conditions while attempting to climb her 4th summit of the 7 summits. Beyond personal achievement, Rachel's expedition supports Breakthrough T1D's research and aims to inspire others living with chronic conditions. Join us as we delve into Rachel's remarkable journey from being a young patient to a pioneering mountaineer to a medical doctor. As we build this podcast from the ground up, your support is crucial for our continued growth. Wherever you're listening, please share this episode and others with anyone you think might benefit. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and X at T1D_endurance, on Facebook at T1Determined, and visit our website, T1Determined.net. Before we dive in, I am not a medical doctor. The topics discussed and the recommendations shared by myself and our guests are personal experiences and not medical prescriptions. Always consult your healthcare team and medical professionals before making any changes to your daily routines, management, or therapies. And now, my conversation with T1D Mountaineer, Dr. Rachel Smith. Rachel, thank you very much for joining me today on the T1 Determined podcast. As a fellow mountaineer, I was so looking forward to our conversation together. It seems like we have a very similar mindset in what it means to manage type 1 diabetes. It's a condition that is you have controllable elements, but there is an uncontrollable aspect to it. Trying to manage that in an uncontrollable environment. You look at mountains, weather predictions are off. There's hazards everywhere, seen and unseen hazards. It's almost within itself like a reflection of what it's like to live with type 1 diabetes. And my first topic of conversation to ask you, what is it about mountaineering? How'd you fall in love with mountaineering? And why do you love that connection with your management of type 1 diabetes and how that correlates?
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me on today. I've been looking forward to the conversation as well. I agree. I think we share a lot of interests, so I think we've got a lot to talk about today. For me, my love of mountaineering, I've loved the mountains in general, but my love of high altitude mountaineering began when I climbed Kilimanjaro in 2016. I'm probably naive. I was only 19 at the time, so probably quite naive at that point to some of the hazards that have become more apparent because I've done it a little bit more. But climbing Kilimanjaro just kind of gave me this sense of I'd like that I was kind of unstoppable in a way, which was quite nice. Obviously having type 1, there is a perceived risk that comes with that. So I think being able to summit Kilimanjaro and summit safely and actually do quite well and cope with the altitude quite well. I just found this like new sense of purpose, and I found it very like a. I always describe it as kind of like a calm euphoria at the summit, and it's an experience I haven't really had from any other extreme or endurance sport. So I just completely fell in love with that feeling. And I think having the element of type 1 on top of that obviously adds additional challenge, but I also think it makes the summit of some of these bigger mountains that bit sweeter. And I kind of hold on to that quite a lot when I'm climbing because I think, yeah, that to me that's quite an important aspect. And I do think there's quite a lot of transferable skills between both mountaineering and managing type 1, adapting, problem solving ahead of time, having to work as a team, having to kind of constantly stay in tune and check where you are and check how your body feels. So I quite like that interplay or intersection between mountaineering and type 1, and I find they actually can correlate or communicate. I don't know what's the best word to just the best
Both,
word.
I guess both. It's synonymous.
Yeah, with each other. Um, so yeah, I think that's why I love it so much because I actually find them in some ways quite similar.
I completely agree with you, and I think it's also within what we might describe as the chaos of it all. It's one of the few sports where you can just stop, look in front of you, and get that, like you said, sense of serenity. And you're just like, wow, I'm in a really cool place at a really cool moment in time. And almost like through the rush of the movement of going up a mountain, you can just stop and everything kind of just, there's this massive breath of fresh air right in front of you when you just take that beat to look at the mountains.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, completely agree.
And so growing up with type 1 diabetes, you're diagnosed at a young age to age 19. What brought you to Kilimanjaro? And then, like, what was your management at that point?
Yeah, so I was diagnosed in February 2000, which was just before my third birthday. And for that first year of my diagnosis, I was on fixed daily injections, which doesn't exist in the UK anymore. I don't know about the US. But essentially, it's fixed amount of insulin, fixed times of the day, fixed amount of carbs, so very restrictive lifestyle. And my parents actually are huge golf fans, and they were watching the PGA Tour. And there's actually an American golfer, Scott Verplank, who was, I don't know if you know him, he's a type 1 diabetic and was playing in the tour with the insulin pump. So this prompted them to go and do a bit of research into the insulin pump, and to see whether it would be a viable option for me, and essentially brought forward a case to my pediatrician in my local hospital, to see whether I could be trialed on the pump. And they agreed, which is like not sure that's how things work these days, but
What time period, just to give perspective, this is right when pumps are just becoming a thing. I mean, I think they were new in the United States, so in the UK, they were probably just like
it's step behind. Yeah, this was I went on the pump, I think in April, March or April 2001.
okay.
So yeah, very early days. But yeah, I became like allowed me to be the first child in Northern Ireland to actually use insulin pump, which paved the way for type 1 diabetes management at home. But yeah, the pump gave me a huge amount of flexibility, more so than it had. So I feel like I had a very normal childhood, and as a result of that, have always been encouraged to get into sport, always been very sporty. And we have a beautiful mountain range not far from family home called the Mourne Mountains, which I spent a lot of time in kind of when I was growing up. And I think then off the back of this love of the outdoors, love of the mountains, kind of ingrained in me from a young age. Um, I when the opportunity came up to climb Kilimanjaro, I just was like, "Yep, I wanna give it a go. I know I would love to try a multi-day hike. I'd love to see how I get on at altitude." And that, yeah, that kind of led me to doing it. And at that point, I was on the just still the Medtronic insulin pump at that time. It's very early days of CGM, so didn't use a CGM. I was manually checking my blood glucose the whole way up. So kinda crazy to think between then like, think back to then and compare it to now, because I couldn't even imagine doing a big climb without a CGM at this point.
It I always refer it to, I mean, at least when I was diagnosed and given a CGM right away, so I do not know diabetes without the term trend. So
Yeah,
I always find it fascinating for people like yourself who have lived with out the no like, not knowing what, like, the graph is, and now
Yeah.
I can imagine that your whole world has completely changed just being able to look at a graph.
Oh, completely, like, day to day and sport and mountaineering. Like, when I was diagnosed over those first, whatever, 15 or 16 years, it would just be, like, snapshots, so maybe,
Yeah.
like, 5 or 6 blood glucose readings a day, whereas now you would check it maybe, I don't know, several times an hour, so it's crazy how much more data is available and how much easier that actually makes, like, climbing sport, day to day life.
Did you find when you started to look at that data that you saw you were able to kind of fine tune your exercise? So, like, for example, what hikes actually did to your blood sugars, what eating fast acting sugar or certain foods actually start to do. Instead of just like looking at a number per day, you started to actually see reactions to what you were doing throughout the day, that would then help you and relate back to mountaineering to help you train, and what foods you needed to bring, how far you could push yourself throughout a day, etc.
Yeah, and absolutely, and I that's actually an interesting question because I when the CGM came out, I actually remember finding the transition quite stressful because say if I'd had lunch and I tested myself and my blood sugars were like 5 or 6, and then maybe checked 3 or 4 hours later and they were also 5 or 6, in my head, I would have assumed that everything was fine in between those times. But having the CGM actually highlighted that maybe blood sugar spiked a little bit and came back down, and I was doing things that I didn't actually was quite, blissfully unaware of before. So I actually found, yeah, the transition quite stressful and anxiety provoking because I'd seen all these periods of time that were now highlighted to me as issues that I didn't know about before. So it took actually quite a bit of time to become used to that and to kind of accept that and then to make the changes to avoid those like spikes and drops in blood sugar. To get me, yeah, to kind of the point where I am now, where I'm very aware of what my blood sugars do and what different exercise does to my blood sugars and how to prepare ahead of time. But yeah, it definitely wasn't an overnight transition. It took quite a bit of time.
We will definitely get into the in between stages, such as your climb on Aconcagua, but just for right now, kind of wrapping up Kilimanjaro to now you're training for to be the first female type 1 diabetic to climb Vincent Massif in Antarctica. What has that transition been like from the moment that you summited Kilimanjaro, climbing without a CGM and pricking your fingers,
Mhm.
to now being able on the precipice of going to Antarctica and facing subarctic temperatures, extreme cold, and just being in a really awesome, as we said earlier, uncontrollable environment. How has that transition from then to now been for you?
Yeah, and I think back, like, that's over what, 8 or 9 years ago, nearly 9. Definitely a lot of learning has happened in that time between Kilimanjaro and now I've, yeah, been to Nepal, Aconcagua. I've done quite a bit in the Scottish Himalayas and Norway and things. So I've learned a lot over that period of time and from each climb individually as well, both about what works, what technology works best, how to keep my insulin safe, what kind of snacks work best. So I'd say, yeah, it's probably just been quite a steep learning curve to get me to this point. There's no way that I would have been taking on this kind of challenge, as my after Kilimanjaro. I think I've needed a lot of the in between climbs, to be safe and to learn a lot more. Um, yeah, I find it. I'd probably just describe it. Yeah, it's just like an ongoing learning process, and just um taking little bits from each climb. And there's definitely been things that have worked well, but also been things that have not worked particularly well.
Yeah.
So yeah, kind of get me to this point.
Yeah, I mean, at least for me personally, I've learned the most from everything that doesn't go well. It's like when stuff goes well, it's great, but you don't learn that much. So let's talk about the in between steps. Aconcagua is the tallest mountain in South America. So after Kilimanjaro, if I didn't say it earlier, Kilimanjaro is the tallest mountain in Africa, and actually a mountain that I'm training for to accomplish the end of this year, early next year. The seven summits, tallest mountains on each of the seven continents. Aconcagua is one of those, and you accomplished it. And again, so like I'd love to dive into your personal story because I know some stuff may went wrong with the pump. I'd love to learn a little bit about that, but more so the mental fortitude that went into climbing. Now you're talking about 23,000 feet as opposed to 19,000 feet with Kilimanjaro. How that little extra bit of high altitude. What did you notice was starting to happen to your body as a type 1 diabetic when you started inching higher and higher in altitude?
Yeah, I'd say up until about 6,000 meters, which is the
Mhm.
highest I had been until I did Aconcagua. I would say that I was fortunate not to experience like significant effects of altitude, and I didn't really feel it on Aconcagua. That extra 1,000 meters, that I really started to feel it like a lot. So I'd say that was probably my first experience of the impact of altitude. So
Mhm.
shortness of breath, palpitations, nausea, which obviously then feeds into it's difficult anyway, but it obviously then adds a layer of complexity to managing type 1. Like, having feeling nausea and, having a few, like, even, like, vomits, the impact that has on type 1,
Yeah,
I can
because I
probably
mean, say for
nothing
example, if you do vomit, you just shot out the blood sugar that would be, like, in theory rising. If you needed to rise, it's like it throws your whole body for a loop.
Yeah, completely threw everything off, and I had a few vomits on the summit night, and
Mhm.
then even just from the mental side of things, having to then adjust to being like, "Okay, what do I need to do now?" I still feel nauseous. How am I going to get more carbs in? And how I did that was just by taking simple carbs, so like just good sweets, things that I knew that were going to be easy to eat and palatable. Yeah, but I'd say that additional altitude and the consequential impacts of like, physiological manifestations of altitude, I found difficult, yeah, full stop, but then also having to manage type 1 alongside that. It was also a lot colder than previous mountains that I climbed, so I had less opportunities to stop and measure my blood sugars on my phone. So learning to trust my body and know when I had to take, 5 minutes just to be like, "No, I don't feel 100%. I
Yeah.
just need to actually stop here." And
Mhm.
being able to communicate that with other team members and my guides, what I found to be a really important aspect. And when I spent quite a bit of time actually reflecting on that particular summit night and how I actually managed it in retrospect. And I think there is a lot going on. And I think it's very easy to get overwhelmed. And I think at times I was starting to kind of creep into that. So how I actually managed it was just to kind of have this subset of like 5, 6, 7 questions. Like, how do I feel? What do I think my blood sugar's doing? Do I need to stop? Do I feel like I'm at risk of dropping low? And if I was happy with all of the answers of those questions, I would actually kind of subconsciously park it in one side of my brain and then just go back to solely focusing on the physical climb for maybe 10, 15 minutes and then rechecking in with those set of questions because otherwise it's just there's a lot going on at once. And I think it would have, yeah, been quite difficult. So that's how I managed it, but it wasn't really a plan that I had ahead of time. It was like more of a retrospective reflection,
Yeah.
which is interesting.
You didn't realize till afterwards that essentially you're creating a status report
Yeah,
every
essentially.
point.
Essentially. But it wasn't something I'd had to do on
Mhm.
previous times. So yeah, like I said, it wasn't something I had anticipated or had thought that I would have to prepare for. So yeah, interesting reflection, and that's probably my biggest learning point from Aconcagua.
I was gonna say, is it something that you have since taken with you?
Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely, for sure. The mental
very
aspect,
awesome.
huge, yeah, huge thing.
Yeah, ironically, I know exactly what you mean because I do something similar when I'm about to face a extremely steep section, and you're just like you have this fear in you. Like, for me personally, it's like, I know I sugared up, but then I know I'm gonna be on the steep section that I don't wanna have to take more sugar unless I absolutely need to. And it's just like, know what my blood sugar is going to do, but then I have this fear that it's not going to do what I'm predicting it to do. And it's like, I would need to go at least 20 more feet until I'm in a safe section to stop and breathe and check and so that mental aspect of just being like, I can push through. And I guess you said like every couple minutes that you did that. So you created like checkpoints for yourself, correct?
Yeah, essentially.
was it more so time checkpoints or was it like physical checkpoints? If you saw like a rock in the distance, was it like I need to get to this rock and then I can check, like mentally check or check my phone? Or was it more like I know a couple minutes have gone by, so let me check my phone?
I think it depended more on where we were in the mountain. As you're probably aware from climbing the higher mountains, that you climb a lot of it in the dark, especially on summit nights. So a lot of the climbing during the night I actually couldn't see the next physical checkpoint.
Yeah.
So it was more in time. And as we got closer to the summit and the sun started to come up, and I could see that, I could see like that boulder ahead, I could see that ice bit ahead, and that would transition then into more of a physical or visual checkpoint where I'd be like, okay, here, I'm going to take a minute, I'm going to check up there where, and I know that we're going to stop at that rock, so I'm going to have 10 minutes to, you know, take a bit more time. So yeah, it just kind of very much depended on the situation at that time.
Yeah. I can imagine that, and even with your training for Vinson is that you take a lot of fast acting sugars with you.
Yes.
Um, how do you fuel up, I guess, before the climb and then while you're moving? Um, are you having I mean, personally, I have, like, those, like, highly preservative Mountain House meals. Is your method more calculated, or is it kinda just, like, take it as it goes? What fuel-wise and nutrition-wise, what does that look like for you on
Yeah.
the mountain?
Most of it's been taken as it goes, and this is something that I'm trying to change a bit more in my preparation for Vincent. And on Aconcagua, I would try to eat as much as I could the night before, but coupled with that, nausea feeling, and it would just kind of go down to simple foods and is what I could actually stomach. I think I did make I'd say I probably could have changed my nutrition plan for the actual summit night. I think I had quite a lot of fear around going hypo. So my method to that was just to actually not eat a huge amount, probably less than I should have, because I didn't want to have as much insulin on board to then risk that drop. And that led to, not having anywhere near as much energy, especially towards the summit, than I probably should have or that other people in the group had. So I think I've done a bit of research, and reflection on that coming up to Vincent. And I think my approach this time is going to have higher calorie, lower carb foods, so like nuts and like foods that are high in fat, and coupled with, the likes of high energy cereal bars and jelly sweets if I need them. If I'm going at risk of hypo. But I think, yeah, fueling with that lower carb food to avoid extra insulin going on. And then for me, reducing that fear of hypo, I think is going to be a big thing for me going forward.
Fascinating concept how with, like with type 1 diabetes, we often think about how fueling affects our blood sugar, but with extreme endurance, you then have to kind of rethink how fueling will get you through the day and through the obstacles, and your objective.
Yeah. And yeah, it's a completely different way to think of it, I think. Because for me, yeah, when I'm fueling and doing an extreme sport or whether I'm training or in the mountains, my first thought is how is this food going to affect my blood sugars? And then second is how is it going to fuel my body? And so it's, yeah, having that trying to find a way that those two things can actually correlate or complement each other a little bit more, um, rather than two isolated questions, because ultimately they have to work together.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, you could have great your blood sugar can be in range, but you could be extremely dehydrated and still put yourself in a dangerous situation.
Exactly, which you want to avoid.
Yeah, you don't just have to worry about your blood sugar.
Yeah, absolutely. I think because you're, you know, moving for long periods of time for often days back to back, your body does need a very high level of fuel or a lot of carbs that, that it wouldn't necessarily need, just day to day. So it is a huge part of planning for the climbs, and ultimately, key to success as well.
On Aconcagua and on your training expeditions now for Vincent, while you're climbing the duration of the expeditions, do you find that you are taking less insulin or becoming more insulin sensitive?
Yeah, I definitely find especially at lower altitudes, that I become, yeah, more insulin sensitive, especially on the climbs when you're doing, back to back, 8-hour days. I take a fraction of the insulin that I would, when I'm just training normally. Um, the like transition to that is like when I'm at high altitude. I don't know if you've experienced this, but maybe like 5,500 meters. I don't know what that
Mhm.
is in feet. I work in meters.
Yeah,
And
I
above,
always multiply it by 3 and just give a rough estimate. So I would say it's somewhat equivalent to a 14er.
yeah, something
Pretty
like that.
fun, yeah.
From that kind of altitude onwards, the low oxygen stress, puts a stress on the body, and I find that stress response of adrenaline, noradrenaline, actually pushes my blood sugars up. So I'd say general rule, but lower altitudes increase sensitivity, higher altitudes increase or reduce sensitivity, so more resistance.
So the higher up you go, the more you have to change your game plan.
And yeah, yeah, and it's just again that comes back to that being able to adapt, problem solve, check
Mhm.
in.
And correct me if I'm wrong, I personally think there needs to be more research on this. I do believe from what I've read of the literature that there has been no conclusive evidence that altitude itself affects type 1 diabetes, but it is the extra exertion of the physical body that then indirectly affects type 1 diabetes.
Yeah, I find the same. There's been very little conclusive evidence of how the body actually responds to the type one actually responds to altitude. Different research papers found have said slightly different things, both plausible explanations. But I think it's just a very under researched area, which in some ways is understandable, but I would, yeah, I think like yourself, would love to see a bit more research into that area, especially for other type 1 diabetics coming through, because, yeah, I think it's very hard to say that the body does this one thing. For me, my knowledge and what I go off has been anecdotal based on my own experience and also experience like yourself, and other type 1s rather than like hardcore evidence.
It is definitely difficult because, I mean, when you conduct studies and research, at least from, like, a scientific perspective, you want to be, again, in a controlled environment. You want to control your subjects, and high altitude mountaineering and mountaineering in general is something that is so uncontrollable that it's almost extremely difficult to get that data. But there is this missed opportunity that we have these CGMs. We can log and track what we're eating, what we're physically doing, and then see a direct effect to our blood sugar. So I think at least for the future, there's an awesome opportunity to discover as type 1 diabetics and also just like the human body in general for non-type 1 diabetics. It would be cool to do a comparison, like have an expedition, somebody climbing, one person with type 1, one person without type 1, slap CGMs on both of them and see what the blood sugar trends do for the entirety of the expedition. That's like, to me, that's a fascinating, untouched realm of research.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's so much that we can do now, like you said, with the advanced technology that we have. And now with the ability to enable more type ones to go to altitude safely, and it's definitely becoming more of a sport. So I agree. I think there is a lot of opportunity currently, and there will be more in the future to do that kind of study and gather more data, which I think will be so beneficial to so
Yeah.
many people.
Completely. I mean, it starts with that. It starts with people being able to then accomplish what they want in this life. And then if you look at, I love fantasizing and looking at a grand future. I mean, talk about space travel, Mars one day. It's like, how does the type 1 body react in those kind of situations of the human body in general? This is just like that will then help us progress and figure out what we need to do to have more accomplished lives that we want to accomplish.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like I said, with the increased data, technology, everything that's out there, there's no reason that we can't do these things or at least start to look into them.
Mhm. And speaking of other planets, I think Antarctica is the closest thing we have on this planet to another planet. So let's talk about preparing for the cold with type 1 diabetes. And we can always convert the temperatures, but what kind of temperatures and weather are you expecting to face out there?
So yeah, in general for the climate, it's going to be an average temperature of minus 30 degrees Celsius. That can range from the base camp from about -15, -20 degrees Celsius up to the summit, which can be down to -40 degrees Celsius. So extremely cold, definitely the coldest that I have been. I think before the coldest I maybe been at was maybe -20, -25. So definitely a new challenge, and something that it's hard to prepare for, but obviously very important when it comes to type 1, especially with keeping insulin safe, and keeping ourselves safe. How I prepare for this, or the kind of things that I do, to keep insulin safe, is, I don't know if you do this as well, is to store it in like Frio cases or like temperature regulation cases to help avoid the extremes, of temperature. So just package all of my insulin into, 5 or 6 of those. I will sleep with those in my, sleeping bags at night, and on the
Yeah,
climb
keeping it
itself.
close to you.
Yeah, and like in down jackets and stuff, when I'm exposed to the cold temperatures, I'll make sure that it's like in internal, um cases or pockets close to my skin. And also
So
I'll get
on top of the cases, you so, like, how well so say, for example, if you just have one of those I'm familiar with the cases, actually, I've not used that because I've just kept it close to me, but I have experienced the problem, especially, like, when I was at Denali Base Camp, the problem of keeping insulin close to me, but when the sun was hitting you, and even though the air temperature is very cold, the sun causes a reflection off the snow and it actually feels really hot, and I
yeah.
had the scare of insulin overheating, so I then had to take it out and put it in a little dug snow cave, and it's just I can imagine these cases are a lot better of a solution than that. What would it be like if you took it off your body? Do you still need to keep them on your body?
No, so I can take the cases, and even then can kinda come off your body for a short period of time, but I just limit the exposure to, like, the direct air and sun, I just try and keep it sheltered as much as possible other than when I need it. And then just things like, doing insulin pump changes, like, inside a tent so it's sheltered, um, things like that. And I also give some of it, to guides and one or two other, like, kind of members of the group that I would trust, just so there's a backup somewhere else in case I need it or in case something happens to mine.
Yeah, that's a really smart idea, is having contingency plans.
Yeah. So important in the mountain.
Yeah, especially, I mean, having that trust of, I mean, guides are awesome because it's like they're the experts of the mountains, but you're also climbing with other people and it has that team aspect. So being able to rely on people is crucial. I related it on a recent episode of when you're climbing on a rope, you are not only taking the responsibility of your life, but you're taking the responsibility of every single person who is on that rope. You're almost as a team.
Yeah.
So managing your type 1 diabetes, your safety is everybody else's safety as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's kind of the same thing, or even you can just correlate between those 2. Um, I have a chat to everyone in the team just so that they're kind of aware of type 1 and just some of the key symptoms to look out for, because, hypoglycemia can mimic symptoms of high altitude sickness, particularly high altitude cerebral edema, but, like feeling a bit dizzy, that almost drunk appearance. I just educate everyone in my team just for those kind of things to look out for, and what to do if I'm showing any of those kind of key symptoms.
Yeah, and just for reference here, high altitude cerebral edema is the swelling of the brain due to high altitude, which causes very similar symptoms as hypoglycemia, confusion, stumbling, extreme hypoglycemia. High altitude pulmonary edema is the swelling of the lungs, so you'd see more of less similar to type 1, you would see more like the coughing, unfortunately, your lungs filling up with fluids, if it gets really bad, blood spewing up, and the only solution is to get down low, but just having people be aware that both are a hazard for you on the mountain, I think is really important because you can come across hypoglycemia and be a little confused, but it's not due to the severity of cerebral edema.
Yeah, yeah, and it's just being aware of those 2 things, and then, yeah, as a type 1, just a lot of people in the mountaineers if they saw someone exhibiting those symptoms, it would jump immediately to health sickness. So just having that team that be like, actually, no, there's something else that we would need to think about is really important for safety.
Yeah. To me, someone might listening might be like, "Oh, that scares me. That's a reason not to do it." But to me, these are all reasons to go out and go climb in Antarctica. It's almost empowering, because again, it just relates back to mountaineering as a sport where you face so many obstacles. So you throw type 1 diabetes into mix. It almost like I don't want to say it belongs there, but it's almost like it correlates to every other thing that's on your mind while climbing.
Yeah, I find there's a strong link between the two. And like alluding to the start of the podcast, that's one of my reasons to do it, like you said, and one of
Mhm.
my driving forces. And I think for me anyway, they complement one another, and I think they strengthen my ability to well manage type one and also to perform in the mountains.
Really awesome. What other obstacles are you expecting to face in Antarctica?
Ooh, other than type one.
Yeah, right. And extreme cold.
I think the one of the biggest challenges that I can't really do anything about, but that I'm mentally preparing for is just how remote it is, um, how far away from civilization. The base camp and Vinson itself is a flight away from the closest point of civilization, which is Union Glacier. So if there was anything to go wrong, that would be the next point to look at. But even that is going to, be basic compared to what we're used to, um, in our cities. So I think preparing for that, both mentally and physically, we can't really prepare for it physically, but mentally more than anything, um, is probably one of the biggest challenges for me anyway.
Mental preparation seems like a huge factor in anything really, but especially while managing type 1 diabetes. And I think you're a massive advocate for that. Just within kind of relating it to daily life in general, how important do you think mental health is? And then just kind of being kind to yourself, checking in on yourself personally, and making sure above before aside from your blood sugars, how you as a person and mentally are doing, how important do you think that message is to relate to the world or give shout out to the world?
Yeah, absolutely, and even from a background as a doctor as well, I think the mental health side of things is so important. Like, there's no point in having your physical health if you can't have your mental health. I think the two are very closely interlinked. And from the perspective of type one, I think it's very easy to have bad days. Blood sugars aren't going well and beating ourselves up. So I think it's important to kind of check in on that. And if we are having a bad day, just to kind of lean on those supports of friends and family. And also to, acknowledge that every day is just a new day. And that tomorrow is a fresh start. I think that's a really important mindset to have with type one. And I think, yeah, I feel like I'm in a good place with my mental health and type one, which has just been it's not something I've ever shied away from. It's something that you would work on every day, something that I would be very open about. And that definitely for me anyway directly translates into being in my optimal, health and mental state to, perform well in the mountains. So yeah, agree. And the whole thing is just very, very interlinked.
It's
Um,
all well rounded.
yeah, yeah, 100%. Um, Yeah, for sure. And yeah,
Um,
to be mentally strong in the mountains, I think you have well, for me anyway, I have to be mentally strong day to day.
mhm. It's like the whole mind body connection, especially I think with mountaineering. It's like you have to focus so much on your objective. So if you're not there, it's again, there's so many hazards, obstacles, risks that you're encountering. So it's almost like a safety aspect to make sure that you are okay.
Yeah.
At the same time, that's a lot of pressure to put onto a mind.
One
So making sure, like, what are some things either in a tent, when you have some downtime, what are some things that you do to make sure that your mindset is okay?
Yeah, so I listen to quite a lot of music. I find music to be very meditative. I prepare a lot of playlists ahead of time depending on which mood I'm in, and playlists that I know that I can have an emotional connection to and relate back to. I also have a good photo bank stored on my phone of like friends
Nice.
and like good memories and things to look back on, and then to also remind me of why I'm doing it, and like screenshots of nice messages, especially when I don't have Wi-Fi. So that's probably the main thing for me, and just yeah, yeah, for sure.
Really, really cool. I find that anything that you can do to relieve your stress, especially sometimes like when you're in a tent, it's hours and hours and hours.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
but to me, I love those times. I love reading a book.
Yeah,
But
it's
just
epic as well. So I can go for the first time and absolutely loved it.
yeah, it's again a time where like it seems like everything slows down. So
Yeah,
it's one of I'm a very go, go, go person. So it's always one of those times where it's just like, I don't have to be so go, go, go.
yeah.
But it seems like the stuff that you do during your downtime relates back to who you are as a person and relates back to reminding yourself who you are as a person and then give you that mindset to pursue when you are moving.
Yeah, absolutely, and just kind of feeds back into that, why am I doing this? What is my motivation? What is actually the goal here? And I think that just helps to drive me and almost to like recharge my batteries on those like kind of slower days, or when we do have a bit of rest in the tent, so that when it's time to go again, I feel charged and ready to go.
Yeah. In relation to mountaineering, but also in relation to type 1 diabetes, um, you are a doctor. How if you wanna explain a little bit about your career and then how that has related to have you come across type 1 diabetes, but how is that then related back to your specific management of type 1 diabetes from the unique perspective of being a doctor?
Yeah, so definitely having type 1 definitely fed into my decision to want to study medicine and actually become a doctor in the first place. And having that frequent exposure to the healthcare system from, a very early age, I was very aware of what it felt like to, feel seen, valued, um, and I wanted to be able to give that back to other people in a is the least cliche or cringy way that I
Yeah.
I do think it is really important, because quite often when you're meeting people, in a hospital, it's in one of the most vulnerable times of their lives, um, and, the hospital is a very, very busy place to be, so taking an extra, 5 or 10 minutes to make someone feel like they matter and seen and valued is really important. So yeah, I studied medicine. I started in 2015, graduated in 2021. So I've been working as a qualified doctor for 4 years. 2.5 of those years have been in Scotland, and 1.5 years has been in Melbourne in Australia. And yeah, I've absolutely come across type 1 diabetic patients along the way. Not actually always in the sense that they've come in with an issue related to type 1. That they maybe come in, something else. And maybe I'm working in obstetrics, so quite often they're pregnant, or even just coming in with like a broken toe or vomiting. And the type 1 is like an additional factor that has to be taken into account, which I quite enjoy being a part of, because I do feel like I have this extra understanding, and I always, if I come across a patient with type 1, I always, say early doors that I'm type 1 as well, and that I understand. And I think that makes them feel a bit more seen, and like they actually understand, um, or that I understand more what's going on, and make them feel a bit more understood. So it's quite nice. I always feel like it makes it a bit more personal. I wouldn't necessarily say that it's changed how I manage type 1 objectively per se. But I obviously, you learn something from every patient, and I'd say I've definitely learned a lot from the type 1 patients that I've been fortunate enough to be part of their journey.
First off, good for you for pursuing this. I mean, it is you said it's cliche, but it really isn't. I think it's extremely important work. And I like if you were a type 1 patient or just any patient, just knowing that you are going through a complicated chronic condition and then somebody shows up and they have something that need like a problem of their own that needs to be handled right away, just knowing that you can manage this insanely complex chronic condition, and then that might like to me, that would provide me comfort being like, "All right, I'm in good hands." Like, it's like she knows what's going on with the body, she can handle and manage this. Again, it's like it's not like I hate the word it's not a disability, it's empowerment, and it can cause extreme comfort, in a situation like being in a hospital where you're I can imagine you're confronting so many various situations every day,
Yeah. Yeah.
related and unrelated to type 1.
Yeah, absolutely. And it can work both ways as well. There's sometimes that patients come in who are, very comfortable managing type 1 and maybe have a pump and all and everything else. Um, and they sometimes face like the other challenge of actually the medical staff wanting to jump in and manage it for them. And even they're actually quite comfortable doing a lot of it themselves. So it's quite nice being with obviously within the realms of safety, being a bit of an advocate for those people, being like, actually no, like, from my own experience, I would feel the same way, like, they know what they're doing, obviously we need to check in, but, kind of work with them rather than, coming in with the, we need to do this, we need to manage everything. So just kind of taking a step back from that. So it's quite nice, yeah, being an advocate for those kind of patients too.
Very important perspective. Somebody's arm is broken, their blood sugar, and as a type 1, their blood sugar is spiking because of the adrenaline.
Yeah.
So it's like focus on the arm and they will focus on their blood sugar.
Yeah.
I have no idea what that's like or if that's accurate, but great
Yeah.
example.
It's case by case, like patient by patient. But yeah, having that extra layer of understanding is definitely quite nice and quite comforting at points. And patients sometimes say that to me, which is nice.
Your perspective as a doctor has, and you said it doesn't directly relate to your type 1 management, but has it related to understanding what your body does in endurance, or does it give you some sort of extra backing while you're out in the mountains?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I feel at this point I have quite a good understanding of how the body physiologically adapts to extreme sport and then specifically to altitude. Yeah, especially the acclimatization process, understanding how as we go higher and the oxygen saturations drop, our body's natural response to acclimatization, and then why that manifests into, symptoms like shortness of breath and palpitations and nausea. I actually find, for me anyway, I find it quite comforting and quite interesting. And yeah, my experiencing these extreme like symptoms and really feeling a bit quite awful at times. But I definitely find a lot of comfort in understanding why that has happened.
Yeah.
Sure. I think sometimes we can know too much, but I think in the mountains for me it's definitely been a positive.
It allows you when you are able to confront a situation, then you then know how to handle it, or at least you know what's going on. I think that's when relating back to the vomiting on Aconcagua, it's
Yeah.
like at least you knew what you're experiencing, and to allow you to kind of, and again relating back to that status report to yourself, checking in with yourself and constantly being like, all right, this just happened, why did this happen, I what can I do moving forward? Am I okay? What decisions do I have to make based off what I know?
Yeah, and that's absolutely that, and it just kinda helped me answer some of those questions and that checklist with a bit more certainty or understanding, um, which helped me anyway to manage that additional complexity of, like, even type 1. Um, if I have for me, if I having that extra understanding, I definitely helped me, I think, overall.
And being in the medical field and being a type 1, technology is ever evolving in an exciting way. At the same time, mountaineering is a sport that you try to get away from society. As you said, Vincent is very far away if there was a rescue needed. The closest society is the base camp. What excites you about the future of technology with type 1 diabetes, and then connecting that to being out in the mountains? Um, how do you see it as important to have just enough technology with you, at the same time escaping society, the much needed escape? A lot of mountaineers love to just, I guess the word is escape, society, to be in that nature. So I guess this question is to just encompass it in a more concise statement. How would you balance the advancing technology with the need to enjoy nature at the same time?
Yeah, and I think you can be in the mountains and you can escape from technology and society per se and, not being on Instagram or social media, but still being able to benefit from the technology. For me, there's kind of those don't necessarily have to go hand in hand. For a detox or escaping social media can still mean relying a lot on diabetes technology, and I suppose that will look different for everybody. But for me, I kind of view them as two separate things. So with the advancing technology, and everything that kind of comes with that, I view it as overall a beneficial thing. If I can be in the mountains and in nature, and have to focus less on my type 1 because technology is able to take some of that responsibility away from me, and therefore I can focus more on the nature and everything that's around me, I think that that's a good thing without having to, yeah, be intertwined with, yeah, social media per se. So yeah, overall, I think it's a good thing.
Yeah. It's not like the type 1 apps are a social app. It's a different sense of technology where it's helping you be more of the person that you need to be or you want to
Yeah,
be.
exactly, exactly, for sure.
When you visited Nepal, did you see Mount Everest? What part of Nepal did you go to?
Yeah, I did see it, and it was incredible. I
That's
flew
awesome.
into Kathmandu and then just did the traditional route, you know, the trek into base camp,
Yeah.
um, and then came back. There's a little town you pass called Lubuche on the way in, so I climbed Lubuche East on the way back. So yeah, I
Okay.
went to the little town
Nice.
and climbed to Lubuche High Camp and then summited from there. So yeah, I was able to see Everest at several points along the way, and also on the way back. And I climbed it you know, Everest Point, so the first summit of that season, 2019. We're getting radioed in when I was there, so I found that really interesting. And actually met quite a few climbers along the way, more on so on the way back who'd actually summited and come down, so hearing their stories firsthand.
Awesome.
So yeah, honestly, one of the best experiences I've had. It was incredible, and I think I've always known that in some way I'm going to go back to the
Yeah.
Himalayas. Don't know what to do just yet, but,
Yeah.
yeah,
That
it
that was my next question, is Everest on the list for you?
yeah, I don't know. It is definitely something I've thought about, a lot recently, and I think there obviously has been, particularly in the most recent years, a lot of negative press with regards to, you know, commercialism and queues and mountains, and I know there's a different perspectives on that and different arguments for and against. Um, and it definitely is a question I've been asked quite a lot even since I've been at home, in Belfast, would I want to do it? And I think right now I don't actually know the answer just yet. If I am going to go and do it, and I would want there to I want you wouldn't for me anyway, my why or my reason to do it, would have to be really strong. Um, and I would want to be very careful of the approach that I would take into doing it. Um, and I just haven't really given myself the time to kind of delve into that just yet, with Antarctica being my priority at the minute. So yeah, I just don't really 100% know just yet. I would absolutely love to give it a go, but I need to make sure that I'm doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah. Well, first off, just seeing it in general is an amazing thing to do. No matter what, it still is the tallest mountain on the planet. So just to see something that magnificent and just to see the whole Nepal, the whole region
Mhm.
in general is just really something to gotta had to put a huge smile on your face to check off the bucket list.
Absolutely, and it's an absolutely beautiful, magical part of the world, and something that I've definitely been very interested and intrigued by, but for a long time. And you know, watched every movie there is, every documentary, read the books. So yeah, the fascination definitely goes back, and it's even just to see it and be there was absolutely incredible.
And secondly, the first and well, the most important thing right now is all focus on Antarctica. So I believe that I am so excited to hear about how it all goes. So you're going kind of. I was looking at the calendar, so it's kind of the same time that I'm going to Kilimanjaro. Correct? You're going towards the end of
For
the
me,
year.
Kilimanjaro.
I'm doing December 28th through January 10th. So I'm
Oh,
not sure if it's the
almost
exact
identical.
dates.
That's almost identical. 27th of December to the 10th of January. Yeah.
That's gonna be really cool. We're
Yeah.
gonna have to do some simul I don't know if we can until after the report, we'll have to do some simul posting.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It'd be so keen. That's actually funny that we're doing the exact same time.
Even more empowering to see 2 Type 1s doing 2 of the 7 summits at the same time.
Yeah.
Um, Again, I think everything you're doing is so cool. It just what you're doing, just that level of mountaineering experience that you've gained is something that I aspire to want to do. So thank you for inspiring me, and I know what you're doing is not just inspiring me, it's inspiring thousands, if not millions, of other people, type 1 diabetics and not. I think it's extremely important work, just the endurance that you're facing and the objectives that you're going after.
Yeah, yeah, thank you so much, and that's ultimately what I hope to do, kind of through this expedition and making it that bit more public is to kind of help redefine what we can actually do with type 1, and
Mhm.
be a part of that next step and, yeah, going forward with showing what else we can achieve.
For the type 1s who are either newly diagnosed or just getting into exercise, nutrition, and have this pull, towards the mountains, as I call it a pull, it's like a magnet. I close my eyes and I see them. Um, what would you say to somebody who is just starting out as a mountaineer, as a type 1 diabetic, one sort of like kinda encompassing advice that you'd give somebody to manage type 1 diabetes while out in the mountains?
Yeah, I would say everyone's story looks different and just take it day by day and take the time to understand how your body and type 1 reacts and responds to these different environments. And don't be too afraid of the ups and downs along the way because we all have them. And there's a credible community of people out there to look for advice. Um and yeah, you'll be absolutely fine. And just to go for it and enjoy everything.
Enjoying it is a huge aspect. I think it's the mountains is something that a friend told me that they're one of the last pieces that is untouched. I mean, it's touched by trails and whatnot, but really you can't build a city on top of a summit.
Yeah.
You can build a gift shop on top of Mount Washington, but the higher the you go on the mountains, the less likely you're able to do that. And that still does not take away with how magnificent Mount Washington is. They're just mountains to me. I said this before. To me, they've been here before us. They'll be here long after us. They are as close as we can get to looking at forever.
Yeah, absolutely, and just such a beautiful, yeah, like you said, untouched kind of part of the world. Yeah, and just enjoy it. So much to be gained from it. And I think having type 1 and manage the complexities of type 1 in the mountains actually only makes us that bit stronger.
After your Antarctica climb, we're going to have to jump on another podcast episode to give a whole report of the trip. I'm very excited to continue to follow you through the training and to watch and see and hear how it goes. How can the audience do likewise with your mission as a Type 1 Summit? How can they follow you before, during, and after your Antarctica expedition?
Yeah, so I'm sharing all of my content on Type 1 at Type 1 Summit on Instagram. Yeah, I'll be posting regular videos, sharing updates, highs and lows of Type 1. So yeah, please follow along and you can reach out to me on social media and yeah, email is on there as well if you have any specific questions or want to be involved.
Really cool. As a fellow mountaineer who is wanting to do all the stuff that you're doing and is working my way towards it, again, all of this excites me, and I have learned a lot from you that I will personally be taking away to the mountains, especially number 1 is the refining my status report checkpoints,
Yeah.
and then number 2, looking into the cases on top of because I currently wear, like, a vest to keep insulin, better ways to keep insulin safe throughout the mountains,
Yeah.
and just over encompassing the mindset that you bring to the table. So once more, I'd just like to thank you for all of the knowledge that you shared with me, and it's again going to be shared with everybody. So really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me today. I really appreciate it as well. I think we share a lot of similarities and very excited for the future of Type 1 in the mountains.
Totally agree. I'm excited to follow you, and good luck in Antarctica.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rachel, for sharing your remarkable story with us. Your expedition to Mount Vinson is more than just a personal adventure. It's a powerful testament to the fact that a chronic condition like T1D does not have to be a barrier to achieving the impossible. We wish Rachel the very best of luck as she prepares to tackle the extreme cold and altitude of Antarctica's highest peak. We will be following her journey closely. You can follow Rachel and her upcoming adventure on her socials at Type 1 Summit or visit type1summit.com. For all our content, please visit t1determined.net. Connect with us on social media. Find us on Instagram, TikTok, and X at T1D_endurance and Facebook at T1Determined. Until next time, keep pushing your limits. I hope this helps. Stay strong, stay determined. T1 Determined.